This one skill separates the beginners from the professional producers. That is sound selection. And you're gonna wanna get good at it. So today, I'm gonna give you 5 tips on how to get better at sound selection quickly. You ready? Let's get into it. Tip number 1 is to take your time to find your favorite sounds in the VST. That's right. A lot of times whenever we're selecting sounds, whenever we're cooking up beats, we can go through all the different options that we have because so many modern VSTs just have such big sample libraries. So instead of doing that, take the time to actually find your favorite pianos, find your favorite bells, find your favorite synth leads. Do all of that, because if you even look at great producers like the Neptunes, a lot of their big smash hits come from stock sounds coming from the Korg Triton or Korg Trinity keyboards. So just because you don't have super unique, ultra rare sounds from some super vintage keyboard from somewhere in, France or something like that, doesn't mean that you can't necessarily develop a unique sound. So you can make these sounds that are available to so many producers your own simply by how you use them, how you put them together. You use this piano from Omnisphere and use this lead from Serum, and you tend to use them pretty consistently. And then whenever you start to get placements or even beat sales from independent recording artists, they can start to request that sound. You see where I'm going? So you can develop your sound strictly by having a base of favorite sounds that you like to go to, and you can use that to help craft your sound selection. So every time that you're inspired and you feel like cooking up a beat, it's not always you scratching your head, where do I go for an electric piano? Where do I go for a bass sound? You already know the kinds that you like and what works with what because you've practiced it and you use them so much. A lot of times as producers, we want to have the most unique, most out the blue, unorthodox sound. And a lot of times that's really just our ego speaking. We just want to feel like we're the most unique person in the world, when the fact of the matter remains that the artist has to still get on the beat to make the song, to make the memorable hook, to make the memorable ad-libs and, ins and outs and intros and outros. The beat is still just a part of the full song and context. So don't feel like reusing different sounds is going to make you somehow ultra repetitive or ultra predictable. As a matter of fact, a lot of producers who get different VSTs and different big sample libraries, they tend to pick the same sound, similar sounding sounds from other VSTs and put them together in similar ways. I don't know if other producers actually recognize that about themselves, but I do recognize that. So instead of doing that, spending a whole bunch of money, because a lot of these plugin companies have a pretty big profit motive, take the time, find your favorites, and don't be afraid to reach for that same bass sound on multiple cookups, or that same lead sound or string sound on multiple cookups. I promise you, the only people who may start to notice is other producers, but you're not selling beats to other producers for other producers to create songs to. You're creating beats for recording artists who still need to add their layers, their music onto your beat to make it something special. Tip number 2 is to create tweaked versions of sounds that you already like. You might have a bass patch that you really like 90%, but if you tweak it a little bit and play with the cutoff, play with the resonance, that's where you really like it, you can go ahead and save it that way as well. So you can have your favorites, then you can have your tweaked version underneath your own separate menu, so you know that you have a tweaked bass line or a tweaked bass patch that you really gravitate towards. Or maybe there's a bell sound, or maybe there's a string sound or a vocal sound inside of a VST that you really like, but you tweak it, you customize, you play with some of the parameters and get it the way that you really like. So each time it's time to cook up a beat, you don't have to reshape it and remake it into the way that you like it. It's already saved right there in your menu, in your folder, so that way you're not constantly customizing the sound. So I have different electric pianos that I like to be real fat and have chorus effects, and I save it that way. And also there's different pad sounds that I really like, and I save them that way. I just customize it, I just tweak them and really make them my own. As a matter of fact, the song that I produced for Blue Da Vinci Vinci way back in the day, that main sound was actually came from Reason. You know, Reason back then didn't have so many different refills like they do now. Refills are basically like expansions that go into Reason. Reason didn't have too many, so I found a patch in Thor, which is one of the racks in Reason, and I just tweaked and tweaked and tweaked, and I made this pad and just this real weird vocal thing going inside of a pad, and I saved it and I made that my own. So when it was time for me to just cook up, I instantly played the pad, I felt it, I knew it was the way I wanted it to be. I added my drums on top of that, and the rest is history. But if I wasn't in the mental space, or if I didn't plan by already having that sound saved in Reason, and I just opened up and was going through different pad sounds, and I might have lost my inspiration of the idea that I had in my head. So, you know, take the time, go through the different patches in your VST, tweak them, get them the way that you want them to, and save them. So that way, if the inspiration hits, you're not searching through, sliding through, just going all over the place trying to find a sound that you like to complement another sound. You already know what goes with what because your ears are already in tuned. Tip number 3 is to understand different frequency ranges and EQ. So whenever it comes to sound selection, sometimes there could be a complementary sound to your primary sound that you don't know quite goes together, because maybe one sound has way too much thickness in the mid range, or the other sound may have way too much low end. And if you understand the different frequency ranges, you'll know how to blend them together in a complementary fashion. So you can pull out some of the 200 hertz in one sound, the other sound has a thicker lower mid range, and you can add those two things together and it comes together like butter. So hopefully I'm not talking over you guys' heads when I talk about frequency ranges. As a matter of fact, I just released my new course called The Drum Doctor. I have a section in there where I talk about EQing instruments. So if you want to learn more about mixing your beats, make sure you check out the link to The Drum Doctor in the description, and I'll be glad to help you out there. But yeah, when it comes to cooking up, sometimes producers just don't know that certain sounds go together. They kind of keep sifting through and going through different sounds to try to find the perfect one to complement each other, not knowing that if they just played two sounds together, shifted, pulled out different frequency ranges in the sounds that they're trying to work together, the things could come together like magic. The sounds could come together like butter, like peanut butter and jelly. Those two things could just blend perfectly together, but you still need to understand frequency ranges so you know how to just quickly get in there in the EQ, pull out different parts, put them together, and quickly go through. You know, you don't want to lose inspiration when it comes time to cook up beats, and that's why sound selection is so important, so you know how to get that idea in your head onto the DAW, so that way you can keep it moving and finally complete the beat. Tip number 4, don't get too close to the beat. Now, what does that mean? Getting too close to the beat is essentially spending too much time on one particular section. You're just listening to a loop over and over and over again, or a section of instruments over and over again. You're just racking your brain, not knowing what to do next. And that can have you wasting a lot of time, just once again sifting through multiple sounds, not really, you know, coming to any real point. So if you find yourself getting too close to the beat, flip through to another beat in your DAW, listen to that beat, add different sounds to that beat, you know, get in the zone for that track. And then after you're done with that, or, you know, listening to music, whatever, and just jump back into that beat and just come into it with fresh ears. I'm not saying, you know, totally walk away from the beat, because, you know, sometimes that's how you can end up with a whole lot of unfinished projects. And, you know, that is a video in its own, how to deal with that, those, you know, getting stuck in that 4-bar loop or 8-bar loop prison. But if you are trying to select sounds, you're working on a track, you can't get way too close to it, you're not really thinking clearly, you're not really listening clearly, because you've just been listening to things on repeat over and over again. Your ears and your energy just needs a quick little break. So once again, listen to a different beat, complete a different beat, you know, add different parts to another beat in your catalog in your DAW, then come back with fresh ears, get re-inspired, and find those sounds that you need for that track. Tip number 5, collab with other producers. Yes, once you collab with other producers, you're gonna listen to how other people, other producers select sounds and add them into the track that you're working on. So you might just have a bare bones skeleton track, and you send it to another producer and they just do something totally different. You can listen to how they're filling up space, you know, what kind of sounds they're using, why they're using it, how it's panned. And, you know, at first when you start collabing with producers, this may happen. You might feel like a little off, like, what, you know, why did you do that? You know, take some time. Don't instantly, you know, hit them back to change, tell them to change anything. Just sit back, listen, and try to listen to things from the perspective of a recording artist as opposed to another producer, because I've collabed with other producers and I heard the beat back and I'm like, I really wouldn't have made that decision, or that kind of doesn't really sound finished. You know, a lot of times when I've been like, it doesn't really sound finished, I keep getting those BeatStars notifications later and I'm like, oh, you know, I was wrong. You know, it needed to be more spacious. It needed to be more empty when I would have just filled it up with all kinds of different stuff. And, you know, that gets into the refinement of music production, you know, understanding that less is more, and then collaborating with other producers. You can see how they think about sound selection. You can see how they think about adding sounds to different parts of the beat. Even in the file names, sometimes producers will leave the VST name that they use to create the beat. That can even give you more options in the future if you decide to journey on to a different VST, or it could be one that you already have in a certain sound that you just didn't click on inside of the different categories that you have, because these VSTs are so massive these days. So, you know, collabing with other producers is definitely going to give you more insight on sound selection. So it's definitely underrated. Give it a try, and I promise you, you won't regret it. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit like and subscribe. My name is Desmond A, and I'll be back with more great videos. Peace. Desmond.